What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the reveal of number 22 in my power rankings, a deep dive into the Denver Broncos. And while last episode we talked about the team that I had ranked too low out of any team, the Jaguars, this is the video we're going to talk about the team where last year I ranked too high in the Denver Broncos. I believe I had them 7th heading into 2017. And ironically, these two teams, as far as my power rankings metric is concerned, actually came out exactly the same, 78.1. I did give Denver the nod because I think offensively they're going to have a little bit more of an identity and be a little bit more of a threat on the offensive side of the ball, whereas I see both of these defenses being stellar this year. So as we enter 2018, Denver falls down here to 22. Do keep in mind that we have already revealed 6 AFC teams here in the 20s and 30s. So Denver right in the thick of things in terms of competing for the playoffs. Can absolutely say the same thing about Jacksonville, though I think their schedule is much tougher. You know, last year, thought that defense would be back, thought the offense would be serviceable enough. And to be honest, about a third way through the year, I was actually looking pretty good for that. You know, this team was rolling. They blew out the Cowboys at home. CJ Anderson looked great, but then they just could not get sustainable enough quarterback play. CJ Anderson goes down. They lose their identity and really just started free falling. So that is why they signed Case Keenum, to establish a nice baseline for the quarterback play, who definitely can provide at least some sort of identity for this offense. And this transitions nicely into our positional grades part of the video. After this, we'll look at the schedule and really talk about my expectations for this team and what they're going to have to do to get into the playoffs if it's going to happen. So Case Keenum, I was pretty hard on him doing playoff predictions, and with a Vikings team that had already made the playoffs and really was talking about Super Bowl types of expectations. I will still reiterate that Case Keenum, it's going to be hard to win a Super Bowl with him because he doesn't utilize the entire field. He's inaccurate throwing anything more than 15, 20 yards downfield, and even when he's on target, it doesn't get there with any sort of zip. The defenders just have plenty of time to close in on that. So against good playoff defenses, they're able to take away what he really excels at, which is the play-action boot game, those short passes. He does some really nice things on third down with his feet as well. So he does at least give this Broncos offense a nice baseline. So if you're in the Vikings shoes and you are a playoff team, you look to upgrade Case Keenum. But when you are Denver and your quarterback play last year was Trevor Siemian, Brock Osweiler, and Paxton Lynch, this is definitely an upgrade, even though they still come in 30th. But I do think Case Keenum is going to be able to sustain more things offensively than they were able to last year. It's actually a very similar roster to Minnesota's last year offensively, which we'll start to notice as we go through these positions. So I did like the Case Keenum signing. I think it was a good move to at least stabilize things at that position. And then you got Paxton Lynch and Chad Kelly, who are the opposite of stability. Paxton Lynch, I was not a fan of him coming into the draft. He has given us no reason in the film that he's shown, and his inability to win this job, given us no reason to believe that he's going to ever fix the mental side of things. And then Chad Kelly, you can really say the same thing about. Now, he's a guy you can make an incredible 10-minute highlight reel of. You know, he's mobile, he's accurate, strong arm, can throw on the move, everything you love, but has really just shown no consistency on or off the field. And there are Broncos fans that believe in him. I understand why, but you're definitely projecting a pretty big leap mentally from Chad Kelly for him to be anything close to a starting caliber quarterback, though I do think he makes this team. So let's move on to running back and the rest of the surroundings here, talk about who's going to be helping Case Keenum. And, you know, we really only need this offense to be, you know, somewhere around 24th in the league, I think, if we're going to talk playoffs for the Broncos, because this defense, as we'll get to, is, I think, really, really good. So this running back room, it's not great. We'll start with Royce Freeman, who's going to be competing here with Booker for that starting job. And I liked Royce Freeman coming out. You know, he has the ideal physical profile. 5'11", 229 pounds. He's pretty fast at that size as well. You dial up his film, you can definitely see the speed for a bigger guy, which is nice, but I want to see him run with some more explosiveness and determination, both in terms of his vision and just running more violently, because at that size, that's how he's going to make his money, is between the tackles. And he can do some other things. He's a very similar build to some of those elite running backs like Saquon Barkley and Le'Veon Bell. So I'm not going to say he's going to be that elite, but I think that's why people are intrigued by him, because he does have pretty crazy physical profile for his size. You are projecting a pretty serious growth and development from Oregon to Denver, but that is in the cards here. We'll see how it all plays out. He will be competing with Devontae Booker, who I see as a bigger Christine Michael. Give him a hole. No one's going to want to get in his way. Very powerful and explosive in a straight line, but not a whole lot of finesse. I'm not the biggest Devontae Booker fan. As far as who wins this job, I am going to give the nod to Royce Freeman. I think he just has a little bit more skill to his game. Both these guys have a lot of high upside physical ability. This is just something I can't really explain. It's more of a gut feeling with Royce Freeman. When I watch him, I feel like something is missing. And this is a case where we see him at the NFL level. He could very quickly change my mind. I think it's just sort of that violence and determination that I want to see more of from Royce Freeman. And then you got some interesting guys as well that I want to keep an eye on behind those two, who, by the way, are certainly not locks to be the lead back here. Especially, you still got guys like DeMarco Murray, by the way, on the open market. It could be a home for a guy like that. But you got D'Angelo Henderson here. I think when they took him, they kind of saw a little bit of CJ Anderson. He's not nearly the bowling ball. I think Henderson's more like 206, whereas CJ Anderson was like 226. So he doesn't have the same power, but definitely a good receiver out of the backfield, has some shiftiness and explosiveness, kind of a little bit like a poor man's Tariq Cohen. So if Booker and Freeman can't really capture receiving ability here in this scheme, I think we do start to see some D'Angelo Henderson. And then way down here, keep an eye on Phillip Lindsay. I think he could easily make this team. He profiles pretty similarly, actually, to Dion Lewis. He runs very hard for his size. He's a smaller dude, but a really good receiver out of the backfield who will make that first guy miss more often than not. So if Freeman and Booker really struggle and Henderson doesn't work out, and they did take David Williams in the 7th round as well, I'm not interested in him. I do really like the potential of Phillip Lindsay to emerge as kind of a Dion Lewis type of sleeper. Obviously a little unlikely, but a guy to keep an eye on. So we move on to this receiving core. Really like these receivers. So they come in tied with 4 other teams at 6th. So you got Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders there, still one of the best duos in the league, though Sanders definitely started to show some signs of regression, though you could certainly argue that was injury related last season. Still think he's a very good receiver. And Demaryius Thomas, still in his prime, though probably in the last year or two of it. And that is why I'm such a big fan of what this team did in the draft, right? Because they took Courtland Sutton, who is my number 1 receiver in this class. A ton of upside. My comp for him was Allen Robinson. You could certainly compare him to Demaryius Thomas. Very good with the ball in his hands, tough to bring down. Doesn't have the same top end speed and is a little bit lighter, so not quite as powerful of a runner, but a similar profile, 6'3", very good athlete at that size. And then they took a young Emmanuel Sanders in a way, and Deshaun Hamilton, who made some of his best plays out of the slot for Penn State. So I really like how this team had really bad depth, and they instantly brought in some really good depth, but they brought in depth that will learn under their veteran counterpart and could be a seamless transition, and they don't really have to change much scheme-wise. So I really like those 2 picks specifically. You do have Isaiah McKenzie here. He's whatever for me. He's a kick returner. Potential to be a slot receiver here, but with what Sanders and Hamilton can do out of the slot, I just way prefer them in the slot to Isaiah McKenzie. And then you got Jordan Taylor here and Carlos Henderson, who was a 3rd-round pick last year. I thought Henderson was a reach. I was not a big fan of him in last year's draft. Just don't really see the skill set, is a good athlete. To be completely honest, I wouldn't be stunned if Carlos Henderson was the odd man out here and they decided to keep Jordan Taylor just as a guy these players like in the locker room and possibly more of a special teams move there. So then you look at these tight ends as well. Jake Butt poised to hopefully be the starter here. They do list Jeff Howerman as the starter on Our Lads. But speaking of taking rookie counterparts, Troy Fumagalli, a very similar player to Jake Butt, both good receivers. I think Fumagalli actually blocks better than Jake Butt, so it's going to be an interesting competition here, specifically between Butt and Fumagalli. I like both those players. You got 2 really solid tight ends there, and honestly, I don't know a ton about Jeff Howerman, but he will be in the works here as well. So really 3 good tight ends there. as a whole, this receiving core is just much deeper now than it was last year. It's not like Thomas and Sanders have been living embodiment of good health over the last couple of years. So if anything does happen to them, you've got some better pieces to keep this thing going, which was definitely part of what happened last year. So then you look at the offensive line here, and theoretically, it should be all right. It's definitely a problem for them last year. Garrett Bowles at left tackle showed some very nice things. He actually impressed me a decent amount last year. You got Ronald Leary at left guard, Matt Paradis at center. So really left tackle to center is going to be the strength here. Connor McGovern is the weakness at right guard. And then they signed Jared Valdir at right tackle. Now Valdir started last year as arguably the worst tackle in the NFL for Arizona. They let him go. He did turn things around and start to stabilize his pass protection in the second half. If you look at his PFF grades, it's night and day from the first half of the season to the second half. So who are they going to get? Are they going to get a deteriorating veteran who's going to struggle like he did in the first half of last year, or are they going to get a healthy version of him that we saw in the second half? If that's the case, they've got a steal at right tackle, and all of a sudden we're talking about a actually pretty good offensive line here for Denver. So tough to predict what you're going to get there. They do have Menelik Watson there at right tackle as well. They draft Sam Jones in the 6th round. I don't love the depth here. Max Garcia has really struggled. You don't want him to end up coming in. So other than right guard and potentially right tackle, you're in pretty good shape here. Should be an improvement from last year, but I don't think it's going to be any crazy jump to be any sort of even top 20 offensive line. Again, they come in for 25th. So overall, offensively, they do come in 28th. I think they, if they are going to make the playoffs, they're going to have to take a slight jump up. Maybe the offensive line's a little better than expected, or you see a guy like Royce Freeman really emerge as a stud running back. That's the type of thing that I think we are going to have to see in order for this team to jump up to be more of a 20 to 24th ranked offense, as they come in 28th right now. That's the type of thing that would be just enough, I think, to get this team to where they want to be. So it'll be interesting to see this all play out. I do like a lot of these pieces they have here. And then defensively, I'm still very high on this defense. They come in as the 4th overall defense for me, which is higher than Jacksonville, believe it or not. And the biggest part of that is the addition of Bradley Chubb. So we will start talking about the pass rush here. Already a very good pass rush. Shaquille Barrett played very well last year. Obviously, you have Von Miller there. And then they take Bradley Chubb, who was the clear-cut #1 defensive player in this class, in my opinion. So hard to get those elite edge rushers, and I think they got one in Bradley Chubb, which is terrifying, the fact that he's going to be playing opposite Von Miller. Now, he reminds me a lot of Derek Barnett coming out last year, although Chubb is bigger, faster, and stronger. He's already got a decently refined skill set that's only going to continue to get better. He's a good enough athlete to have a physical advantage over almost every offensive lineman he's going to see, and he has a very high motor. So I think offenses are going to be terrified trying to pass against these guys. They're going to have to get rid of the ball quick, and it's really going to open up things for the rest of this defense. The best players in the NFL, the true superstars, they make everyone around them better, and that's what we're going to see with Von Miller and I believe Bradley Chubb. And they also got Shane Ray here. I think he gets phased out, eventually hits free agency. Just hasn't been able to put it together, and this team is clearly going in another direction. But you could probably do worse than Shane Ray as your 4th edge rusher. So with that, Denver does come in with the 3rd ranked pass rush in the NFL. Only reason it's not 1st is you're not getting a whole lot of interior rush. Derek Wolfe still there, but is certainly a few tiers below like a Geno Atkins or obviously Aaron Donald in terms of interior rush. But we will switch over and talk about the run defense here, primarily this interior group of linemen. Run defense is diminished in my rankings, and in terms of winning games in the NFL, just not a huge difference between the #1 team in run defense and the number 32 team in run defense. Analytically, it's actually more of a week-to-week thing in terms of who's going to play the run well. Anyway, you've got some bodies here that are good enough in the middle. Already talked about Derek Wolfe, definitely the best on the interior here. Domata Pecco, a true nose tackle. Adam Gotsis, kind of a freak athlete that's shown some nice things, a little inconsistency, but could do a lot worse than him as a starting 3-4 end. You got Zach Kerr, Kyle Pecco. So just a decent rotation. They come in tied for 11th. You got some good linebackers here. Brandon Marshall plays the run very well. And then Josie Jewell, if he's starting, that is an upgrade to your run defense as well. So I think certain teams are going to be able to run the ball on this team. but I don't think it's going to be, so bad that it's a liability for this defense. And then we will talk about those linebackers. Brandon Marshall really started to turn things around. He struggled a lot earlier on in the year, but definitely started to refine his form. I was starting to wonder if he was going to get phased out. Frankly, he was really struggling in terms of his grades early in the year, but returned to form. And then you got Todd Davis here, who's going to be competing with Josie Jewell. Josie Jewell, very instinctive run defender. Definitely fits that Blake Martinez, Preston Brown mold of a guy that he just doesn't have the athleticism to keep up in the secondary. Probably going to be off the field quite a bit against 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. So that's kind of why Todd Davis is there. They do draft Keyshawn Bierra in the 6th round. Not a big believer in him. So they come in right in the middle, tied for 15th at linebacker. It's a fine group. They need Brandon Marshall to stay playing high like he was the second half of last season. And then we'll switch over and talk about this secondary. Now, people are going to point out that Aqib Talib is gone and that this defense won't be able to be what it once was without Aqib Talib. Well, a few things. You've got an elite pass rush here. It's going to be much easier for young corners like Isaac Yiadom or Brennan Langley, both third-round picks in the last 2 years, who are going to get an opportunity to step up here. They traded away Talib. It's not like he just left. This was definitely something they've prepared for and are ready for. And that said, I have Bradley Roby poised for a total breakout season. This kind of reminds me of what we saw with Casey Hayward. Had a limited role with 2 really good corners in front of him, but really graded out pretty well as a third corner, starter, not starter type of guy. He's definitely got experience, but this is the first time he is going to be on the field all the time as the number 2 corner here. Was drafted in the 1st round to be that guy. He definitely makes the list of top 10 breakout players for me. I think he could absolutely take a jump into that tier of true number 1 corners. And it also helps a little bit that you got this pass rush and Chris Harris still here, who is a dominant corner, still one of the best corners in the league for sure. So I see cornerback still as a strength for this team. I really liked Isaac Yiadom, by the way. When I say really liked, I really liked him as a guy that could come in and be a number 2 corner right away. So between him and Langley, I think they're going to be able to figure out how to make this work. Chris Harris plays a lot of nickel anyway. Yiadom and Langley more outside corners, so I like it. And then at safety, interesting going on here as well, because you trade for Sua Cravens to be sort of that dime linebacker. We definitely could have mentioned him when we're talking about a guy like Josie Jewell being taken off the field and then Sua Cravens coming in and plugging in as sort of a nickel linebacker. So I really like that addition paired with the Josie Jewell thing. Just made sense. You still got Darian Stewart there. He's not getting any younger, but still playing at a pretty high level. And then Justin Simmons, who started off hot, 3rd round pick from a couple years ago, but then kind of simmered out. So in his 3rd season, can he take a step forward, or does that become kind of a weakness? I like Justin Simmons, just needs to show some more to me. And then no one I'm really interested in talking about behind that. So in the secondary, they do come out tied for 7th. I still think it's a total strength. Paired with this pass rush, I'm very high on this defense. Little softer in between the middle, but that is not the important part of playing defense in the NFL. It's all about the corners and the pass rush, in my opinion. And there is certainly an argument to be made that Denver still has the best pass rush cornerback combination in the league, though I think Minnesota and the Chargers give them a good run for their money. So overall, just a quick review, 28th offensively and 4th in defense. They do come in a little lower in coach and culture, just coming off of a slumpy season. I don't think the coaching here is anything too crazy. So they come in tied for 23rd for coach and culture, which brings them down a little bit outside of the teens and into the 20s here. So now what we've all been waiting for, what do I think happens? Let's look at the schedule here, and Vegas has this team's over-under at 7 wins, and I like the over. I have a win range here of 7 to 10, and a big reason you can be optimistic if you're a Broncos fan is they have an easy schedule early on. And sometimes we see those early schedules give a team momentum, and with an experienced team like Denver, I think that could be the case, the type of momentum that helps you win games down the stretch, like a game at Oakland or at Cincinnati. But there's also times that we've seen in the past where, maybe like the Jets last year or things we've seen from the Chargers or the Cardinals going, 4 or 5 years back, where you come out and you start 4-1, 5-0, and then people are jumping on, and then you really just look at it and it was an easy schedule. So it could go either way for Denver, but I do have them starting 5-1. And then you got to go to Arizona, you got to go to Kansas City, you got Houston, at the Chargers, Pittsburgh, at Cincinnati, at San Francisco. The heart of the schedule, really tough. So it's hard to predict them to come out of that stretch with a bunch of wins. They could do it if they hit that momentum thing that we were talking about, but just hard to predict that. Then they finish with Cleveland, at Oakland, and the Chargers with question marks in those last two games. Could be a case where they really are fighting to get in the playoffs and outplay those teams. Definitely going to be interesting down the stretch for this Broncos team. So I am still slightly higher than public opinion on this Broncos team. I believe they were 26th or 27th in NFL's power rankings, like 21st on ESPN, so I'm right in line there. And I like the over for this team. Doesn't pay a whole lot right now, though. The bettors definitely like them to come in this 7 to 10 range that I see them at as well. So Broncos fans, what do you think? What are your expectations? Did I miss anything here? If you're not a Broncos fan, what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, guys, do hit that like button. It helps me out more than you know. So as always, cheers, and we'll see you next time.